Hello, I am Editor Than Mai. I will provide you with the latest information of the day. Trump to depart the G7 early as conflict between Israel and Iran shows signs of intensifying. Kanaskis. Alberta, AP, President Donald Trump is abruptly leaving the Group of Seven summit, departing a day early Monday as the conflict between Israel and Iran intensifies, and the US leader has declared that Tehran should be evacuated immediately. World leaders had gathered in Canada with the specific goal of helping to defuse a series of global pressure points, only to be disrupted by a showdown over Iran's nuclear program that could escalate in dangerous and uncontrollable ways. Israel launched an aerial bombardment campaign against Iran 4 days ago. At the summit, Trump warned that Tehran needs to curb its nuclear program before it's too late. He said Iranian leaders would like to talk, but they had already had 60 days to reach an agreement on their nuclear ambitions and failed to do so before the Israeli aerial assault began. They have to make a deal, he said. Asked what it would take for the US to get involved in the conflict militarily, Trump said Monday morning, "I don't want to talk about that." But by Monday afternoon, Trump warned ominously on social media, everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. Shortly after that, Trump decided to leave the summit and skip a series of Tuesday meetings that would address the ongoing war in Ukraine and global trade issues. As Trump posed for a picture Monday evening with the other G7 leaders, he said simply, "I have to be back, very important." Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, the host, said, "I am very grateful for the President's presence and I fully understand. Crises abound. The sudden departure only heightened the drama of a world that seems on verge of several firestorms." Trump already has hit several dozen nations with severe tariffs that risk a global economic slowdown. There has been little progress on settling the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, but in a deeper sense, Trump saw a better path in the United States taking solitary action, rather than in building a consensus with the other G7 nations of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan and the United Kingdom, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz held an hour-long informal meeting soon after arriving at the summit. Late Sunday to discuss the widening conflict in the Mideast, Starmer's office said, and Merz told reporters that Germany was planning to draw up a final communiqué proposal on the Israel-Iran conflict that will stress that Iran must under no circumstances be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons-capable material. The European leaders wanted to help de-escalate the situation, rather than inflame it in ways that could spread through the Middle East in unpredictable ways. Trump, for his part, said Iran is not winning this war. And they should talk immediately before it's too late. But by early Monday evening, as he planned to depart Kananaskis and the Canadian Rocky Mountains, Trump seemed willing to push back against his own supporters who believe the US should embrace a more isolationist approach to world affairs. It was a sign of the heightened military, political and economic stakes in a situation evolving faster than the summit could process. America first means many great things, including the fact that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Make America great again. Trump posted on Truth Social, his social media platform. It's unclear how much Trump values the perspective of other members of the G7, a group he immediately criticized while meeting with Carney. The US president said it was a mistake to remove Russia from the summit's membership in 2014, and doing so had destabilized the world. He also suggested he was open to adding China to the G7. Trump also seemed to put a greater priority on addressing his grievances with other nations' trade policies. He announced with Starmer that they had signed a trade framework Monday that was previously announced in May, with Trump saying that British trade was very well protected because I like them, that's why. That's their ultimate protection. High tension as the news media was escorted from the summit's opening session. Carney could be heard as he turned to Trump and referenced how the US leaders' remarks about the Middle East, Russia and China had already drawn attention to the summit. "Mr. President, I think you've answered a lot of questions already," Carney said. The German, UK, Japanese and Italian governments had each signaled a belief that a friendly relationship with Trump this year can help to keep any public drama at a minimum. after the US president in 2018 opposed a joint communiqué when the G7 summit was last held in Canada. Going into the summit, there was no plan for a joint statement this year. The Trump administration appeared disinterested in building a shared consensus with fellow democracies if it views such a statement as contrary to its goals of new tariffs, more fossil fuel production, and a Europe that is less dependent on the US military. The G7, which originated as a 1973 finance ministers' meeting to address the oil crisis, and evolved into a yearly summit meant to foster personal relationships among world leaders and address global problems. It briefly expanded to the G8 with Russia as a member, only for Russia to be expelled in 2014 after annexing Crimea and taking a foothold in Ukraine that preceded its aggressive 2022 invasion of that nation. Beyond Carney and Starmer, Trump had bilateral meetings or poolside conversations with mirrors. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. He talked with Macron about tariffs, the situation in the Near and Middle East, and the situation in Ukraine. According to Macron spokesperson Jean-Noël Ledoux. On Tuesday, Trump had been scheduled before his departure to meet with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky said one of the topics for discussion would be a defense package that Ukraine is ready to purchase from the US as part of the ongoing war with Russia, a package whose status might now be uncertain. Tariff talk. The US president has imposed 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum, as well as 25% tariffs on autos. Trump is also charging a 10% tax on imports from most countries, though he could raise rates on July 9th, after the 90-day negotiating period set by him would expire. The trade framework signed Monday with the United Kingdom included quotas to protect against some tariffs, but the 10% baseline would largely remain as the Trump administration is banking on tariff revenues to help cover the cost of its income tax cuts. Canada and Mexico face separate tariffs of as much as 25% that Trump put into place under the auspices of stopping fentanyl smuggling. Through some products are still protected under the 2020 U.S. Mexico-Canada agreement signed during Trump's first term. Mirrors said of trade talks that there will be no solution at this summit, but we could perhaps come closer to a solution in small steps. Carney's office said after the Canadian Premier met with Trump on trade that the leaders agreed to pursue negotiations toward a deal within the coming 30 days. Please like and subscribe to wait for the next information. Goodbye and see you again.